welcome again, everybody, and thank you for joining for our webinar today on GA4 Deep Dive, Goal Setting and Advanced Features. So just a very quick intro to myself. I've seen a few familiar names on the list, so thank you for joining again. But I'm Sean, I'm Growth Director here at Webbox, and I've been working in the web industry for kind of 15 plus years, worked through different roles like web development, project management, and now business development. And a little intro to Webbox as well. We're a digital agency that specialise in bespoke web development and performance marketing and things like GA4 and tracking of analytics as well. If you'd like to connect with me, I've got my email there, which I'll follow up with an email following this anyway, so you'll get the email. And also, if you want to connect me on LinkedIn, then the more the merrier. Please do that. And Rob, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Rob, Head of Performance Marketing here at Webbox. I've got over 10 years experience in a wealth of digital marketing, primarily across Google, Meta, so Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, across a variety of different audiences, and also the main point of contact for analytics and tag manager.
And he knows his onions.
Yes.
That's why he's here. Cool, thank you. And again, if you want to connect with Rob on LinkedIn, you can find him on there. He shares his thoughts on the performance marketing world, what's updating on a regular basis. So yeah, check him out if you want to keep up to date with those things as well. So without further ado, let's get started. So in traditional Webbox webinar fashion, we have a little look at the content we're going to run through first. So we're going to do, I've said here, a quick GA4 overview, because I think, we're looking more into the goals, more into the advanced elements of GA4. So I would imagine most people watching this or logged on this morning know what GA4 is and what it does. We'll take a look at the GA4 goals and what they are specifically, how that kind of differs from Universal Analytics, its predecessor. We'll then go into that live demo. So we'll set up a few different goals. Rob's going to take you through that and show you how you can do that and how you can do it through Tag Manager. Then talk a little bit about goal optimization and then some advanced features as well within the platform that you can take advantage of. So first up, just a quick GA4 overview. So like we say, I'm sure most of you kind of know what GA4 is. So GA4, Google Analytics 4, I should say that because I did a seminar yesterday and someone didn't actually know what GA was. So it's Google Analytics, the fourth version of it, and it replaced Universal Analytics, which had been around for many years.
Pretty much the entire time I've been in the industry.
Exactly, yeah. So it was always Universal Analytics, and GA4 has replaced it as the new version. One of the biggest differences of it was that Universal Analytics used to run on a session basis, whereas so when you're tracking users, it was based on how long they spent on the site and the session they spent there. But now it's moved to event based. So it's much more focused on user interactions, what people are, what they're clicking on, what their forms they're submitting, the pages they're viewing, where they're scrolling to, all these kind of actions that users take. So that's the main difference. There are obviously bigger differences in terms of how the data structure, all those kind of things, which made the migration from Universal Analytics to GA4 a little bit tricky. But Universal Analytics has now ceased to exist completely. So if you haven't done that migration, then you should have, but hopefully you all got there in time. So then moving into number 2, so what are GA4 goals? So like we say, they differ slightly from what Universal Analytics did. You can go into a little bit more detail in terms of what that was.
So in Universal Analytics, you used to be able to control whether or not you recorded one or every conversion that took place. The big difference now is in GA4, it records every conversion. This means if someone did multiple checkouts or multiple form submissions, they won't be deduplicated, and you'll have every instance of that taking place. It means you're not under-reporting. And also, you've got different viewpoints in terms of how they're recorded. So within GA4, and we'll touch upon this when we do the live demo, you can look at it from a first user session and also a data-driven cross-channel attribution model as well, which gives you different information depending on what you're reporting from.
Yeah, cool. Because that was one of the things with Universal Analytics, wasn't it? It was just web. So if you wanted, with GA4, it will track across kind of
web, app, yes. So long as you've got the Firebase code put in, you can track across apps. And it's on the old Universal Analytics, the default attribution model was last non-direct click. So it was very granular, very performance led, whereas GA4, because of how many different touch points users have now, it takes a lot more of that into consideration. So there's different ways of viewing your data depending on what's important to your business.
Cool. Lovely. Thank you. And then from GA4 goals, this isn't necessarily like specifically for GA4 goals, but when you're setting these goals up in the platform, you want to make sure, SMART is an acronym that lots of people will use for objectives or goals. So that's being specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. And obviously by doing these, it just means that you can measure them accurately, understand how they're performing over time, and ultimately, achieve them. So they're not out of reach.
For full clarification, because if you've got some familiarity around Universal Analytics, we are not referring to what were the SMART goals in Universal Analytics, which considered like page views as goals. We're on about stuff that is important to your business. Now, some businesses are looking at time on site, scroll depth, and the like. Others are more focused on e-commerce or lead generation. That's what we are referring to when we're referring to SMART. We're referring to it as the acronym rather than the fluffy goal that used to exist in Universal Analytics.
Exactly. I suppose that's the beauty of this now, isn't it? Is that you can completely tailor it around what's important to you. So you can track and create the goals around you and the business. Cool. You can just see us floating around here. Lovely. Now we are going to jump into the live demo. So this is the first actually for a web webinar. So hopefully this goes smoothly. But if we just flip.
The page should.
Oh, there, that one. So we essentially got a demo website, which is using our WordPress Grow platform. And Rob is going to use this to create several different goals. So hang on, I've actually jumped the gun a little bit. Hence, sorry, I did say that it was a first time. So some of the goals that we're going to look at setting up, or Rob's going to demo, are link button clicks, form submissions, file downloads, and phone number clicks. Now, the way that, obviously you can go into this in more detail, Rob, but the way these will be set up will be in a similar format.
Yes.
But the kind of values and things you use will be slightly different. So, we'll jump across to that now.
Cool. Can everyone see the website and the new screen?
Should be a forest.
I assume by that everyone can. So what I'll quickly do, this is the GA4 homepage for this staging website. This is what typically you would look to go into when you join. Now, with most of this, your default reports will be found under the reports button. These will look different depending on your audiences. If you've got sufficient permissions, you can add more reports and create custom reports all here. This can click the button here, and there's also like life cycle reports. So if I was to click on these three dots, click edit, you can see what reports are covered here. I'm going to save this, go back. And if I want to publish this, I literally hit this button here. And then these instantly get pushed through to here, giving you greater insight as to how people are interacting with your website.
So what sort of reports might you put in that lifecycle section?
So the lifecycle section, you can see you've got the user acquisition and the traffic acquisition. These are going to be fine from basically the reports you might be familiar with from Universal Analytics. Now, for here, the first user is essentially the first click model, first interaction model. This is, and this remains static. So if you do a lot of top of the funnel brand awareness activity, you will be able to find out what they've subsequently done, regardless. So if someone's come through from a display campaign or social media campaign, they will always live so long as the cookie remains active and does not expire, which is normally over several months. They will remain within these brackets, and then over time you'll be able to see what events they have completed on your website.
So that's even if someone's come in to your website now in September, it will track all of their activity over the next several months and show them here.
Regardless of whether or not they come through multiple stages, further along through organic or referral or PPC activity, they will remain in this.
So they could have come through an ad initially, but then if they come through organic search, they'll stay within that ad.
Yeah. Whereas traffic is similar to the last click element. So this will be subject to change. So if someone initially came through a social media campaign or Google Ads campaign, but then returned at a later date and then converted through organic or through a direct, they will be then assigned through these channels, and these will change over times and months. One of the big differences as well with GA4 compared to Universal Analytics is engagement rate. This has replaced bounce rate, and it's essentially the inverse of bounce rate. Bounce rate was people going onto our landing page and then leaving completely. That was viewed as a negative metric and was often misunderstood, whereas engagement rate is the inverse. So if we were to add them all up, they all come up to 100%.
Yeah.
How this is calculated is also slightly different in the sense that if someone is on the web page for, I think it's 5 to 10 seconds, scrolls or interacts with your web page in any way, shape, or form, it then counts as an engagement. This means you can have a better understanding of how people are viewing a blog article or your website in greater detail than you were just by solely relying on bounce rate as well.
Because before they could have sat on a page for 30 minutes and not done anything.
Yes.
It wouldn't count as a...
If they then subsequently
and then
left.
they leave, it would count as a bounce. Yeah.
Yes.
So that's where that difference comes in.
So in terms of the other aspects as well, if you're also hooked up your Google Ads activity, you'd have what's called the advertising reports. These are cross-channel, data-driven, attributed reports. So if you want to know how people are all interacting with each other and how your digital marketing activities all interacting, this is where you can find this information. This won't be here for this website because it's a staging website. It's not live, etc. But this is where you can compare different attribution models and just see how all your activity, top of funnel, middle of funnel, where it's all sitting in the conversion funnel as well. Now, the important bit,
that might be for another webinar.
This is for another webinar. Yeah. The important bit for the purposes of this is going to be your admin section. Now, this is going to be where you can get your information, link your different products. So as you can see here, you can link your Google Ads account, BigQuery for those who do a lot of data analysis, for those who run an awful lot of high spend accounts. You've got your display, DV360, SA360, Merchant Center. You can pull all this information in. If you use one of these programs, I would highly recommend you link them together, link them to your GA4 account. And if I was to do this, it's very straightforward. It's click on the program, click link, go through these steps. You need to be an admin on both your GA4 and your Google Ads account, or whatever account you're linking with, to be able to do this, but it's straightforward and accept it all. The other big things here, if I go to data collection, this will see what stuff, show you what user information you're collecting through your users and visits to your website. I would always make sure Google Signals is turned on.
Is that turned on by default, or is that?
It's not turned on by default. This is something that you have to manually turn on, but it helps you capture demographic information about visitors to your website and their interests. So for those who run Google Ads, this will be like your in-market or your affinity audiences. So you'll be able to find out people who go to your website are foodies or over the age of 35 or in the market for holidays to Wales, for example. That's the sort of thing you can find out. It's aggregated and it's sampled, so it's not going to, and it's based on user browser behavior. So you can learn a bit more about people who visit your website and how they're engaging with it and which audiences you are actually converting on your website. And it can be really useful. And this is user provided data collection. So this won't be eligible for everyone. So if you work in the healthcare sector, due to Google policies as it stands, in many instances, this is not eligible for you to use. But this is essentially GA4's version of enhanced conversions. It uses first-party data such as email addresses, telephone numbers, and the like, and then maps that rather than solely relying on cookies. It's a more robust method. Google's recently announced improvements on how this data is secured and anonymized. So It's a lot more robust, and it's been gradually rolled out and then just solely rely on hashed.
Just to jump in there, sorry. When you say that like it's using their email address, for instance, is that for instance like for example when you're logged into Chrome, like it knows who you are and what
it's logged into Chrome. It's also when you use your forms to like your if you're doing lead capture, lead generation or e-commerce, when you enter your email to send like the receipts or submit a form, we're using your email. It also captures that as well. I would recommend working with a web devs. We've done this for numerous clients and rolled this out to make sure it's applied, one, effectively, and two, in a GDPR and data protection manner as well. So those are the two things that I would always recommend doing. You can also find the data collection is also, you also have got all the events that you can follow here. Some of these are going to be pre-built, and I can show you where these are pre-built. If I go to data streams, sorry for jumping around. This is where you can find out your tracking information, which will become important later, and also enhanced measurement. Now, enhanced measurement is events that you can track by default within GA4. This is a big development and wasn't what aspect that was previously available within Universal Analytics without doing this manually through Tag Manager. You're able to, and if I go to settings, you can see the different things that you can track by default just by tick of a button. File downloads, video engagements, form submissions, and scrolls. Really useful information. And if I close that, you can then, these get then pushed through to here. And then you can, if you need to tick these, they become a key event. Now, key event is essentially a Google Analytics goal, conversion, whatever is important. All you need to do is click that and it will track it. You can also then modify any of these events. Here, we use event parameters. Now, if you're not that digitally savvy, if you're not that confident, I'd avoid doing this in GA4.
So what are the modifications for?
It means you can basically narrow down how these events are then tracked.
Right.
So if you've done a file download, there might be multiple file downloads where you want to gain additional information about that file download that isn't readily available by default. You can add the parameters in so you've got greater understanding as what people are downloading, where, and the like.
Oh, of course, right. Because if you turn on file downloads to track, it's just tracking all file
Yes.
downloads. So you might want to get
tailor
like
it in.
the file name or what page they downloaded it from, that type of thing.
Yes. You and then to see what key events, you can find out what's been tracked as a conversion here. That I personally, because it's easier and it's less likely to break, use Tag Manager. So I'm going to go back to data streams to explain how this all works. And there, what you're basically going to need your measurement ID, which is here.
And data streams. So that's where we talked about earlier, like GA4 being able to track lots of different platforms.
Mm-hmm.
This is effectively all those data streams coming in to this. Yeah.
Yes.
And then, so the stream we're looking at here is the website stream, which will be there by default, right?
Correct. And then you go to Tag Manager. Now, Tag Manager is a platform used by Google, and it takes an awful lot of heavy lifting from your web development team or any of your digital marketers who also look after the website. Historically, you used to have to manually put the code in to track events and e-commerce tracking and the like. This made your site really big, really clunky and slower to load, and made a worse user experience to people visiting your site. Whereas it basically uses 2 bits of code snippet, you put them onto your website, and it injects the information you need to make sure it's all tracking in the manner that you want it to do. This includes like your advertising platform pixels, your GA code itself, and loads more.
Just out of interest as well, for the guys on the webinar now, feel free to use the chat. You don't have to if you don't want to. But I'm just interested who is using Tag Manager at the minute, because then it could be something that we not necessarily right now, but go into more detail, like how you can set that up. So yeah, feel free to put yes or no if you're using that, and just give us an indication. Thank you.
I'm working off the assumption that your basic GA4 has been set up, but to set it up, to start with, you would go back a bit and take a bit more stuff. You end up on your workspace. If you haven't got your tag manager set up, this will be blank. But to start with, you would click your new tag configuration, Google Analytics, and then it's your Google tag. And then your tag ID will basically end up being discard changes. So I pressed the wrong one. GA4 event, your measurement ID will be here. You name the event. Now, for the naming conventions that I'll typically use within GA4, they use underscores. It's a Google preference, Google move. It doesn't really matter how you name it, but it probably makes life easier so long as you keep it consistent. And then
so you can name it anything you want.
Name it wherever you want.
But it's obviously, organize it so
yes,
clear what you're adding.
Now, there's different things you can show in here, and I'm going to just quickly take you through some of this. By default, a Google event has pre-built in consent checks. So this means you can make sure it's GDPR compliant. You can then apply these sorts of checks to other platforms, but I would test and play around with this, and I'll explain why I would always use Tag Manager to test things in a second. Here you can see your triggers. Now, a trigger is what event that takes place for basically this tag to fire. If I click the plus on the top right-hand corner, trigger configuration, you can be page views, clicks, user engagement, custom events. So the user engagements are quite good ones. So if you want to know if people viewed the entire blog, i.e. got to the footer, you can do a scroll depth when the vertical scroll depth is either 100%, or you can set it to fire when the footer becomes visible. And when you've scrolled down, that's a really useful one. You can view people based on how far through a YouTube video they've got through. Same on the principle in terms of percentages, which again, really usable and really handy. The big one, I would recommend this to everyone, is the clicks. And what you would do here is to create what I call an all clicks debugger. And it would just be fire on all clicks, you click save. Go and call this test. And then call this test because this is going to be very useful. And then make sure, the big thing here is to make sure you've got all of the user variables, built-in user variables included. Now, by default, these are the ones that you would have. Click configure, and I make sure all of these are ticked. And whilst these won't necessarily be applicable for everything that you do, it means you've got a lot of information, and some of that information, whilst that information may not be used, I'd rather have that information and not need it than need that information and not have it. So by ticking through all here, I could then go to preview mode. Now, this is why I use Tag Manager and to do everything. And that is basically because of the preview mode. It's wonderful. You're not going to break anything. Nothing is live. So if you want to test different events, different conversions, etc., this is a place to do it. So if I click connect, and that should basically have opened up a pop-up for me. I'm going to minimize this, click continue, and I've just lost the screen, but that's fine. Thank you. Move that out of the way. So what you can see here is basically the website that you're working off. And if I want to record people who have clicked on, I'm trying to find something. You said it was, which page? What did you say it was on? The About Us?
Yeah.
The About Us. Now, what you can see is the test. This is going to be basically firing on every button click during your duration. And then if I click this information.
I think it's gone to the news. Yeah, that's fine.
Which
use the menu in the top right.
Yeah.
And then go to About Us there. That one.
Cool. There we are. So if I was to click on here, I'm going to click cancel, but this will, you can see here, this has all been tracking what I've been doing on this page, outbound link clicks, variables, and then I can see here the click URL is here.
So this is essentially like the debug information. So
Yes.
every time you're playing around with it in that debug mode, it's literally from the bottom of that left-hand column upwards. So I appreciate I'm pointing at it, but you can't see, is the kind of order. So the first one is at the bottom of the page, and then it goes up in terms of those tags firing and the actions that are taken. So you can see from start to finish what's being logged and not.
And as you can see here, with all the variables, you've got all this information that helps you understand what's been clicked and what information, and it helps you really drill down as to what's important for you. So for example, if you want to capture all telephone clicks, all you need to do is ensure that you click cover this, which is the tell. And I'm making sure I've got the colon, but I don't think I have.
Yeah, you've got that. There you go. That's it.
Cool. Copy. And I can just go back to your tag, click new. To name it. Click your trigger, all elements, some clicks. If I go back to your tag assistant, I can see that's the click URL. And I'm going to also check. So with here, you need to be better. Sometimes the link click and the actual click don't line up. This particularly happens with forms. So this is also why you need to check whether or not it's a link click or just a click. And sometimes if it's the click won't track the URL, it's a weird quirk. So if you want to meet accurate, basically compare these two and make sure whichever one's got the information you need.
So obviously a click is just any click on the website. So, yeah, and the link click is specifically on a link. Yeah.
Yes. And then click URL contains paste. And that's
just go back to that trigger a second. So you said, yeah, so in the first drop down, you've got all the different kind of, what would you call those?
Variables. These are the pre-built variables that I found within Tag Manager.
So it's essentially like the value that you're looking for when someone makes that click. So we're looking at, like Rob said, at the click URL. So that could be, it could be it could be / about us, it could be your news page, but in this case, it's a telephone number. So then you can also, in the middle one, we're looking at contains, but it can be, starts with, there's also different ways to match it.
Yeah.
And then it contains that tell. So you could do, it's like an exact value that you're looking for, but in this case, we're just looking for everything, for any number that someone clicks on the website.
You can then drill down to cover, basically, if you've got multiple numbers on your website, so different branches or different extensions, you can basically refine it to only include specific things.
You could have a mobile or a landline, so you could put in contains, the first part of the mobile or the exact mobile number, or whatever. Whatever variable you need to put in there.
So if for this point of it, I'd be capturing all telephone numbers, but you can add the telephone number in, and you'll still capture it all. I'd click save. I could also add multiple phone numbers here as different trigger elements for whatever reason, by simply clicking the plus and just going through the same steps again. I could also exclude anything that starts with like international numbers or mobile numbers and exclude those. So we're already capturing those specific things. Click save. Copy the measurement ID. Save. And then that instantly becomes there. And if I was to re-enter preview mode, then that should re-pop up. If you can get me back to the pop-up.
Yeah.
Thank you. That will reload the original URL. And if I go to About Us and I click here, click cancel. And for some reason that has, I'm going to double check what I named it. Okay, if I then remove that one because it's getting in the way, I do apologize, everyone. And we go again. Thank you. The about us. Minimize that. There we go. So what we can see here is the Google Analytics GA4 event has fired here. That will be covering all the telephone numbers as well. The other things that you can do is download the guide. It's obviously dummy, but then if I go here, what I can do with file downloaded is see basically the click URL, click text, also exactly what I clicked on. You can then probably find out an awful lot of information in terms of the page path. So you can create that as a file name, for example, and that pushes all through. And this can be then pushed through. If I go back to this GA4 event, which is telephone clicks, event parameters, and then new variable. Sorry, I do apologize. Here we are. So event parameter, you can add any of these elements here. So for example, if I go down here, the page path. So the page path versus page URL. The page path is everything past the / of your domain. So in our instance, it would be webboxdigital.co.uk / and everything past that / is the page path, whereas the page URL incorporates a lot more information, so it just can be slightly more unwieldy. And you can, if going on a deep dive of Tag Manager, you can basically convert the page path into text information and the like to make it really easy for you to see within GA4. But you can then you can name your event parameter, sorry, as file information, and then pass through the value as page path. So that's the sort of information and really visual information you can get.
So again, that event parameter, you can name anything you want.
Anything you want, yeah, but try to keep it as a naming convention. These, and I'm just trying to go through everything that we've covered. The other element here is, if I go back to tag, the preview mode is, and if you can get me back to, so sorry, thank you.
That's my important job. There you go.
Thank you. You are my glamorous assistant.
Yeah.
So we've also got, if I go to probably contact us, which has got a form. Has it got, where's the best place?
There'll be one on the homepage.
Homepage, thank you.
Sign up. Go right down to the bottom.
There we are. Okay. I knew I've seen it. And then
email address, test.com. Every developer's favorite.
Yep. And then I click submit. What I can see here is obviously that form submit. Now, on many websites, you could have multiple forms for a variety of different reasons. You can have gated content, you can have like inquiry forms, branch contact information, whatever.
So that's tracking automatically because it's the signal you turned on earlier.
Yes, that's tracking automatically because of the settings within GA4.
Yeah.
But if you want to, if you've got specific form classes or specific forms you want to find out and tailor it to, this is where you can get all this information from. And it's why I say use your variables, because you can find out, you can have different form names. You can if I again use the URL, you've got the page URL, the page path, which is obviously the home page. It gives the world's your oyster in terms of how granular you can do this. And then once you've done this all, I'm going to discard the changes. You click submit. That pushes it all through.
So is there a case when you're using the preview mode that obviously it's like if the obvious thing is if it's not I guess tracking what you're expecting it to, you can make the change before it's
Yes.
live. But is there ever a case where it's like, can you essentially break the website through this, or is it kind of it's just making sure that it's tracking what you want?
Yeah, you're not going to break the website, but if you've deployed Tag Manager properly, you're not going to break anything. And in most instances, most marketers, all you'll be using it for is to create events, add tracking pixels, so your meta pixels, your TikTok, Instagram, Google Ads, etc. They are the big things that you'll be typically using it for. Some devs can push information through, but you're not going to break anything, and it's a really safe way for you to test, is this event firing as I expected to? Am I picking up anything incorrect? Yes, no. If yes, I can amend it and tailor it. I can and then just take it from there and then submit it and push it all through to the site when you've got the confidence that it is tracking what you want in a manner that you want it to. You can also do advanced e-commerce tracking through this. I would recommend doing it using a web development person, be it in-house or agency, to deploy this, because that's where things can go wrong and information is not being passed through correctly. But this is where you can house it all, so you're not just clogging up your website with an awful lot of data, an awful lot of code that just bloats it all up. It keeps it streamlined. It keeps your website quick, improves the user experience, keeps Google happy because it keeps the page speed insights score high, and the web vitals high, and it means you can focus on providing the best web experience for your customers as possible. In terms of once you've done all your tracking within Tag Manager, you'd click submit. And when you click submit, you have the opportunity to go version name. You can name it, this is whatever you want. It can be as detailed or as not detailed as you want, depending on how many people and what you're.
Because you can just leave that blank.
You can leave it blank. If you're the person in you're solely the person responsible for this, you can leave this blank. If you've got multiple people who go dip in and out, you can put whatever name and information you want in there to make it as easy to follow as to what changes have been rolled out.
Yeah, so that you've got that version history. If you go in then to make a change, you need to know what other people have done for you. So yeah, it can make that life a bit easier there.
So what you've then done, you can set this all, pushed it all through. Your telephone clicks, and if I go back here and bulk it up, event name, phone number clicks. Now, this won't be present instantly within GA4. However, it will push through. So you do not need to duplicate anything you've done within Tag Manager within GA4. It will ultimately just result in things being double counted if you create a custom event here. By doing it in Tag Manager, it just makes your life easier. Give it.
So does that appear once you've just hit submit, or
it appears once Google's processed all the information? Right. So you need to submit it, but it will then appear verbatim. So it'll be phone _ clicks will appear here once Google's had time to process that information. So it'll be a case of potentially just do a load of dummy clicks once you've hit submit. Just make sure it push through within 72 hours. That information will be here. And if I use the click top bar, which is something that Sean created on Friday, hit as a key event, that will then be tracked as something that is important to your business and a conversion. So then when I'll go back to the reports.
Should probably say as well, so the key events are essentially your goals, aren't they?
Yeah.
We call them goals.
Yeah.
And they did call them goals, didn't they?
Yeah, they recently renamed them for some bizarre
So where you've got all the events that you're tracking, if you want them to, because it might be that a click on the About Us page isn't a goal for you. It's just interesting to know if that's happened. So then the ones that you are tracking as goals in terms it might be a conversion, depending on where that is in the sales funnel. It could be, like we say, a document download or a form submission. They're the kind of key events / goals that you're setting in that.
And then what you can see here is when you go to these reports, you've got your event count. So these are all the events that you are tracking within your GA4 setup. So these could be absolutely anything. You can find out when people get to the bottom of a page, regardless of whether or not it's a key event. So as you can see here, click top bar, that would be one. And the key thing to understand, if I pick file download where it's going to be something that's got more instances, and this will show you the total amount. Now, if you then subsequently make this a key event, it will then track as a key from that point. So these won't match up within that time frame because they're not retrospective.
Right.
So that's the key thing to understand. Once it becomes a conversion, it's a conversion from that point. It won't then backdate those conversions. So that's something to bear in mind.
Yeah, makes sense.
But longer term, they will all match up accordingly, which then completes our initial sort of intro in how to set these up. Does anyone have any questions about what we've covered?
I told you there's a reason we're recording this. I would imagine, thank you, Chloe, as well, for mentioning about the tag manager. It's cool to know that you guys are using it. Like I say, we'll kind of like move on to the next steps. But if anyone does have any questions, like I say, feel free to let us know. When we send the recording across, if you rewatch it and again have any more questions, because I know that from my perspective, like I say, I know this kind of top level, but some of the areas where it's kind of like variables or additional parameters that you can add, it can get a bit confusing within it. So if you have anything that you want to ask us, feel free to get in touch, and we're happy to help and answer that as well. But yeah, I think that's a good overview of how those two systems work together. Cool, thank you. So step 4 is optimization. So if you just click through. So you mentioned this briefly already, but in terms of the optimization piece, it's more linking your GA4 with Google Ads, which essentially takes it to like another level in terms of data collection and what's happening.
Yes. So I would always say as a business, you need to agree on what your reporting view is, because there's benefits and drawbacks for basically every option. GA4, you have essentially 3 views, especially once you've hooked up Google Ads to your GA4 account. You've got the session review, the first user view, and then you've got the advertising report view, which is cross-channel data-driven attribution. So the cross-channel takes into account every touch point. You've also then got the Google Ads data-driven view, which solely looks at Google Ads' role within the conversion path, and it typically comes in higher because it's in Google's, and so you get this with Meta as well to sort of push those numbers. So we had an involvement in that a lot more than say GA4, which is actually looks at it a bit more objectively. Once you've agreed these views, so you've got your session, which is going to be kind of your last click. You've got your first users. How did I initially acquire that person in the first place? And then what do they do subsequently? And the data drivens. Regardless of whether or not you're using GA4 or Google Ads to report on, what you can optimize towards is always going to be the data driven view. The difference is going to be whether or not you import the GA4 goals into your Google Ads account, or whether or not you set up duplicate events using the Google Ads conversion tag. They will be using data-driven attribution. The key difference is the Google Ads one will overinflate it and enable you to be more aggressive in the market, in the search space, because you can see the great involvement Google Ads has. GA4 tends to not downplay it, but because it factors in a lot more touch point, the role that Google Ads plays be smaller according to GA4 than with Google Ads. So if your cost per acquisition or you're running to a lot tighter budgets, I'd recommend using GA4 and importing them across. That is very straightforward to do. Just a couple of clicks of the button within Google Ads. So you go to your Google Ads account, go find your settings, and then it's under the goals. In the new interface, it's under goals. Go to conversion summaries, and then you click the blue plus to add new conversions and then import them across. You can then set campaign level goals depending on where you are reaching these people. So to match. So if you were to run display activity, there's no point trying to optimize towards e-commerce goals. If you're trying to get them on the top of the funnel, you can then set different campaign level goals, such as pages per session and user quality, and then get them engaging with your site and then start to funnel them down depending on the tactics. That's one of the big things to consider by default. And this is another session, another webinar. By default, the conversion goals within Google Ads are set at the account level default. So everything is optimized towards the same thing, but that can be quite restrictive for a number of businesses depending on what you're trying to do and how you're trying to reach your users.
Cool. Thank you very much.
No problem.
And then last but not least, number 5 is some advanced features that you can access through GA4 as well. So first up, report and sandbox. I would just say, just conscious of time, maybe like cover these kind of like top level.
Yes.
If anyone wants any more info, then we can provide it. And again, it might be that these kind of.
We very quickly jump back because I can whistle stop through the report and sandbox on the final report. So if you jump back, that'd be very useful. Thank you. So the report and sandbox is something that's a lot more prevalent in GA4 than it was in Universal Analytics. You click the Explore tab, and this is also, I'm going to cover 2 birds with 1 stone. If you want to know how people are interacting with your website, they've got a default template called the path exploration. So this is the replacement of the behavioral funnel reports I used to see in Google Analytics. And then you can see session start, where they've started, and you can customize this depending on what you want to find out. And it's really, really useful. The bits to also consider, whilst yes, this is drag and drops, you can segment it however you want. You can pull any different dimensions in. I'd personally, after this webinar, go into your GA4 account and just go in here and see what level of information you can get. If you create any custom elements, they are, if I remember rightly, I need to minimize some of these, just make it easier. So you can find all this level of information here. Go through these, tick the ones you want, and then click import, and that imports them all into here. And then your metrics, again, go through all of these. If you create custom event parameters and the like, they will be under the dimensions and custom. So if you want to find specific things, that's where you find it. Again, tick all these and then click import. If for whatever reason, because of how the windows work within GA4, some metrics aren't compatible with each other. Once you've dragged, say if I drag that in there, it's already there. But for example, if I want to add breakdown by gender, it will either shows no data is eligible for here, either because it doesn't exist. But the other thing to consider is if you drag it in here, there, and the information is not compatible with each other, they will just become grayed out. Because as you can see here, first user medium is grayed out because we're on the event level. It means Google can't pull the information you want as the report still stands, and you just need to reset that report and go again. You can name the report here. It's quite hidden, but it means if you can and then once you've then put to test, click X.
It's good UI there, isn't it? Yeah,
it's quite hid. But then if you to report back, you can see that custom report that we've just been in is here. It means if there's stuff that's you regularly refer back to, it's there, easy to find. It's a lot easier to find than the saved reports and the custom reports that used to exist within Universal Analytics.
That's where you can completely tailor what you want to see
yes.
from your reporting based on those metrics.
Yeah. I love it. I'd recommend playing around with it and find out all the information, because you can gain some really valuable insights through the reporting sandbox as well.
Nice one. Thank you very much. I guess that kind of half covers.
That covers, yes, funnel reports
as well as what we just talked about.
Yes.
And then last but not least is the audience builder.
Yes. So if we go back to, this is a lovely, lovely bit of information. Go to your admin. So obviously you got your admin cog there, and you got data display, you got audiences, and you can create new audiences. Now, the predictive element for most advertisers, this won't show, because you need a significant amount of data coming through and a significant amount of conversions to take place for this to become reliable. But this does exist. And and then you can basically import this across and create audiences from it. But in most instances, you'll be creating a custom audience. You can set your membership duration to over whatever time limits. There are audience caps for your basic GA4. The maximum number of audiences that you can have is 100 before you start needing to archive them. So you can't delete them, but you can archive them. And then the audience trigger, you can create different events names. So phone number clicked could be one that we've just used, and we can base an audience based on everyone who's clicked the phone number.
Yeah, so the point of this is that you can gather audiences based on that user's behavior. So like Rob says, if they've clicked a phone number or if they've submitted a newsletter sign-up form or a contact form, you can put them into an audience so that you can then market to them separately. So again, this could be they've viewed a certain product page, or they've spent more than 30 seconds on a specific service page, and then you can follow up that audience with ads or email marketing or whatever it is you want to target them with.
You've also got the ability to control the scope of your audience. So it's basically the filtering element. So within the same session across all events or the same event, personally, because I want to capture as much of this as possible and get these audience sizes as big as possible, as quickly as possible, I do it across all sessions. And then you can build it based on whatever criteria you want. This could be events, visit specific pages, you name it, time. I want to visit people. I want to build an audience based on people who visit between the hours of 12, like midnight is one of, and then you can create an audience for people who visit between the hours of like midnight and 6 a.m. at any point in time. And then I'll build it, and you can see how many users end up being part of this audience. And that builds over time and adjusted. But it's a really useful tool. It's a lot easier and a lot more intuitive, I feel, than the old Universal Analytics builder. But the big thing is to consider there is the cap. So don't go mad creating loads of audiences that you may not use. I'd focus solely on what is business critical. So your email signups or your add to carts or checkout abandoners, product page views, webinar attendees, like those are the key things to probably focus creating your audiences from.
Cool. That's a cool tool. I mean, it's amazing how deep the GA4 goes as a platform.
Yes.
Like I'm learning things all the time about it. Cool. Well, yeah, I hope that was useful for you guys listening. Like I say, I know it can get quite sort of like complicated in terms of some of the elements there. So please, when you get the recording through, have a look back through. Any questions, let us know. But as a quick review in terms of today, so we quick GA4 overview. It's replaced Universal Analytics, and Universal Analytics is completely gone. So GA4 is the way forwards. Goals, like we said, are now called those key events. So probably should have mentioned that up front. But all the events that you set, you can then set the key events to be the goals. So that's what you would consider as a conversion. Again, where that sits in the funnel is completely up to you and your business. We ran through the live demo, so again, you'll have the recording of that to reference back to, so you can see from Tag Manager and GA4 how you can set those up and manage them. Goal optimization, this will ultimately help you to understand how people are kind of interacting with the website, so you can optimize the site itself to help drive performance to those goals. But again, like Rob said, linking that up with Google Ads, if you're running that as well, just gives it that extra data feed behind it, so you can supercharge it. And then the advanced features that we ran through there in terms of the reporting sandbox, the audience builder, and those paths, what do they call them? It wasn't funnels, was it?
The funnel path.
Funnel paths, yeah. So make sure that if you get this set up, next level is to utilize those reports and make life easier for you. And ultimately, we want you to be happy marketers. I always slip this guy into my webinars. Big thumbs up. But